All right, so welcome everyone. We're so excited to have everybody here with us, and we have a great panel of folks who we will be doing a Q&A with. I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. I am Ruthie Sarusi. I am the Development Director for the Public Interest Network, which is a network of organizations including flagship groups like USPIRG and Environment America, and state organizations like Environment Texas. We have Luke Mexer from Environment Texas here with us, and Megan Severson from Wisconsin Environment, and a number of other groups and organizations. And we're the only network that runs a coordinated, multi-pronged approach to achieving social change, driving environmental progress, and really trying to create a greener, safer, and healthier world for all. When all of our groups work together across the political and economic spectrum, our ability to shift the narrative and create change, lasting change, is really profound. And we're really excited to be here today and an honor to be part of the Community Conversations Film Touring Program and to host this event because a lot of what Community Conversations is trying to do with the Film Touring Program is what we've been doing for the last 50 years and what we are going to continue to do and do more of in the next 50. Community Conversation points out that the starkness of the 2020 election map proves the point. The heart of the ideological divide in America rests in a few highly polarized states. Community Conversations bring solutions-oriented documentary programs on themes of social, environmental, and economic justice to local communities to increase understanding, build empathy, and encourage action to help us bridge the divide and build toward the future. And the tours focus on critical US states like Wisconsin, Ohio, Texas, and Michigan. We're really pleased today because we have a great panel of top leadership from Texas and Wisconsin. And we also have a award-winning documentary filmmaker, artist, conservationist, Susan Rockefeller, who directed the amazing short film that we're about to see, Come Home. And the film is a broad look at the ecological crisis and the need for collective action to address this crisis and the many crises that we face today. As part of the Community Conversations program, we're going to watch the film briefly and then have a discussion about how we can make progress in the environment in politically polarized states like Wisconsin and Texas. And so we have with us, I mentioned briefly that we have Luke Metzger today, Director of Environment Texas. We have Megan Severson, State Director for Wisconsin Environment. And then we're also very pleased and lucky to have Travis County Judge Andy Brown, Commissioner Bridget Shea of Texas. Both of those folks, the good folks joining us, are from Texas. And then we have Harris County Attorney Christian Menefee from Texas. We also have Wisconsin State Representative Samba Balde of Madison, and Eau Claire City Councilors Jeremy Gregor and Andrew Worthman. And then of course we have Susan Rockefeller. Okay, so Luke and Megan, do you want to go ahead and let's watch the film, and then we'll have a great Q&A discussion afterwards. Okay, well that was really wonderful. It's my third time through of the film, and I like it more each time. And I just noticed the quote from the Talmud in it, which was that "Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now, love mercy now, walk humbly now. You're not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it." And I love that quote. So I hadn't noticed that in my first two watches. I just noticed it now. Welcome everyone who just joined, and we're going to do a question and answer panel with our esteemed group of panelists here. And we're going to start with Susan. And what led you to make this film, Susan, and what are you most proud of about the film?
I just want to say good evening to everyone and thank you for creating this opportunity for all of us to be in conversation together. I think that more than ever, we need these kinds of conversations to be in an open place where we can discuss ideas and differences. I decided to make this film, one, because we were in the midst of COVID, and I actually, I'm part of a film company and I'm usually involved in feature films, and I've done a lot of short format films on my own. And it was really just an opportunity to reflect on the pandemic and what it illuminated in terms of our profound interconnectedness. I also was interested in adding the layered sense of what happens as you age. And when you think back to memory and what it is that gives you hope. And I think many of us look to certain memories that become sort of the basis for our passions. And I wanted to somehow artistically layer both my passion for art, my passion for the ocean, for nature as the greatest muse for me. Most of my curiosity comes from just having time to think about the simple things that many of, I'm sure, Ruthie, your children ask you, like, why is the sky blue and the clouds gray? And, you know, just all those simple wonders of childhood that somehow get or can get lost in the process of growing older and understanding the complexities of how hard it is to bring people together and align with the values that I believe are the most crucial really for our common future. And having read about the people here on this panel, I know we are all aligned in that way, that we want clean air and clean water and opportunities and vibrant, robust educational opportunities and jobs, and how that can be moved toward a green economy that is thankfully being strategized now with the Biden-Harris administration. So really the film comes out of my profound love of nature, my profound love of protecting what is precious to all of us, and wanting to express it in a way that could get out in a ripple effect to a wide variety of people. So I'm thrilled to know that younger people are seeing it as well. Thank you.
Yes, well, that's amazing. And we really appreciate you sharing it with us, because it really is a beautiful film, and hopefully we can help push it out far and wide to our vast network of folks. So that'll be great. And then I didn't actually take a minute to introduce Susan, and most of you probably do know her, but just very briefly, she's, as I mentioned earlier, she is an award-winning documentary filmmaker, an artist, and a conservationist. She's also founder of Musings, a digital magazine that showcases responsible innovation and provides inspiration and action for a better world. She sits on a number of different boards, including Oceana, Stone Barn Center for Food and Agriculture, We Are a Family Foundation, Asian Cultural Council, Peggy McGrath, Rockefeller Foundation, David Rockefeller Fund, and some others. And she's also the principal of a film company where she executive and co-produces a number of films, including 20 acclaimed films, and that have aired on HBO, PBS, and Discovery. And sort of one of my favorite parts about Susan's bio, there's more, but just in the interest of time, was that you're a beekeeper in the Hudson Valley, because A, I love bees, but B, I also grew up in upstate New York. So that I was really, I like that. So anyway, so welcome, Susan. I have one more question for you, and then I'm going to have other questions for the other panelists. So my next question is, this week, James Carvell did an interview with Vox. And it's interesting, if you guys haven't had a chance to read it, he's quite a character and stays true to form in the interview. But what he says is very interesting. And one of the things he said was, do you realize the climate is the only major social or political movement that I could think of that refuses to use emotion? Where's the identifiable song? Where's the bumper sticker? Where's the slogan? Where's the flag? Where's the logo? And this film offers some candidates for those, those things: the flag, the logo, the bumper sticker, the identifiable song. The emotion in particular for me was what resonated. And if you had to choose, Susan, just one image and one comment from all of those in the film that you think people would remember and most be moved by, which one would you pick, or what would you pick?
Oh, that's such a fantastic question. I would say that I think that Greta Thunberg is just a rock star, and the idea that you need hope, but hope without action will not get us where we need to go, and that if we act, we will actually have hope, that they go hand in hand. And that I do think that there is this sense of just a paralysis because of the enormity of the environmental crises that are facing us. And she's basically saying, act. And in that action, you will feel and grow the hope that is so vital to create this movement. And I do think we need to bring the arts, we need to bring song, we need to bring dance, we need to bring all of that into the conversation about climate change, because I do feel that even the Sustainable Development Goals are very scientifically oriented in terms of their evaluative lens in understanding what's at stake. but we don't talk that much about the diversity of culture, the diversity of what makes us human and what makes us want to save humanity.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that, because I totally agree. And the quote from Greta was actually part of my next question for Commissioner Shea. So that's kind of funny that you brought that up, because that quote really resonated with me as well. So Commissioner Shea, before I ask you your question, I'm going to give a really brief background about you. You're currently the County Commissioner for Travis County, which is home to Austin, and you're a longtime environmentalist, and that you've helped save the Save Our Springs movement of 1992, which resulted in Austin's historic law to save Barton Springs. So thank you. And that you're the U.S. Board Chair of the ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, and last week won approval from her fellow commissioners for the Civilian Climate Corps, which will put residents to work on park cleanups, tree planting, solar panel installations, and more, which is great. It's something that we've been talking about in our organization a lot, is the Civilian Conservation Corps. So thank you for all of that. And so Commissioner Shea, so we know that there has been very broad public support for environmental protection, and that the environmental protection, while broad, is shallow. And many Americans have historically said that they are worried about climate change or clean water, or whatever the issue might be, but we have not achieved the kind of action we need, because the public doesn't bottom line it from the leaders. So what do you think we can do to make it a top issue or a top 3 issue in American politics?
Well, thank you for having me, by the way, and really a wonderful film, Susan. It was lovely, and I love the quote from the Talmud as well. I worked as a I'm a former journalist, and I used to believe that if you gave people information, you could educate them, and they would, believe it and change their ways. And when I came to Texas in 1988, inspired by James Hanson's testimony to Congress about climate change, I kept confronting this brick wall of people who were in complete denial about climate change. And they argued the science, and they argued the data, and they even accused the scientists of being on the take, which is like, what? Do you know these scientists? They're not making money off this. And I finally had an epiphany, which was that I feel we haven't been doing enough to prepare people for the harm of climate change. And the window is largely closed on stopping it completely. So we've got to prepare our populations. And it's a totally different conversation than if you ask them if they believe the science about how our actions are creating this blanket of pollution and causing climate change. It's a very different conversation if you ask people, do you think your leaders should do what they can within limits to try and help you and your family and your neighbors and your loved ones try and minimize the harm from floods and wildfires and tornadoes and extreme weather, extreme and deadly weather. And even the most ardent climate deniers, because I've had these conversations with them, will say, well, yeah, of course. And I say, perfect. Let's skip the pointless debate about whether or not it's happening or what's causing it. And let's focus on what we need to do to try and minimize the harm to you. And oh, by the way, it's going to be really expensive. And right now you're picking up the entire bill. And do you think that's fair? Or do you think the companies that are causing this should pay their fair share? So that's another really interesting conversation to have. But I think that's part of what we have to do, is figure out what it is that that people care about or understand about climate change. And I think the biggest piece of it is the personal harm to them. And I think when we bring that home to people, it's a totally different conversation than, do you believe the science, or do you think the scientists are being paid off, or whatever crazy idea people come up with. So it's a very different conversation when it's personal, and it's your safety, your family's safety, your loved one's safety. And so that's what I've focused on. And it's worked.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense, because when people can personally feel it, then it makes a big difference in how they're going to treat it and what they're going to do about it. And one thing that we really focus on, the Environment Texas, Wisconsin Environment, our national groups, and our other state organizations and the Public Interest Network, is really trying to build a strong public support for or against an issue, and really try and win hearts and minds. So we try and lift issues like climate change and the other issues above partisan politics, and really do exactly what you were saying. And hopefully, if we're all working on it together, we can move forward and really try and achieve change. So thank you for that. Okay, so I apologize. It was actually Representative Balde who my hope question was for. I mean, all of these questions and what we're talking about do involve hope and looking towards the future and trying to make change. But so Representative Balde, very briefly, I'm going to introduce you. Representative Balde is a member of the Wisconsin State Assembly, representing the 48th Assembly District, comprising the northeastern half of the city of Madison, Wisconsin. And he's from the Gambia, and which is a country in West Africa, and he immigrated to the US about 20 years ago. And Representative Balde was elected alder to the city of Madison Common Council in 2015. As an alder, he prioritized public safety, water quality, and environmental justice, as well as community policing, and supported district residents in their interaction with the city. Following his first term in office, he was elected to council president, and in 2020, Balde was elected state representative for the 48th Assembly District in Madison. And thank you, Representative Balde, for being with us. So my question for you is that, as Greta Thunberg did say, we do need hope, but the one thing we do need more than hope is action. And once we start to act, hope is everywhere. So following up on the questioner for Commissioner Shea and thinking about what it is that we can do to make environmental issues and climate change and conservation and sustainability a top priority for Americans, what can we do to deepen it? So in looking, where do you see signs of hope in your work in the Wisconsin State Assembly, and what do you think we can do to deepen that hope and deepen that support for these critical issues?
Well, thank you, Rudy, and thank you everybody for being here. Susan, the film is really very educative and informative, so thank you for putting it together and for sharing it. So it is time for action. Our environmental problems are way overdue. So, but there is hope. There's big hope. I grew up in Africa, where I live on subsistence farming. So about 30, 40 years ago, growing up in the village, we grew our food and everything. And we'd go around 12 months without wanting help or buying food from the market or anything like that. But now, 30, 40 years later, there's no way our farmers in the rural area, particularly in Gambia or in many parts of Africa, where people can have live on subsistence farming. So obviously there's a problem with climate. And so obviously if we don't work hard to fix the issues now, or at least address some of the issues that we are faced with, we will leave this world in a very critical situation for our kids. So hope is out there. So just last week, myself and the governor of Wisconsin and Senator Agard went to La Crosse, to introduce a bill on PFAS. So for those who are not familiar with PFAS, these are chemicals that are found in our waters. They have different components to it, but there are not many standards around PFAS around the United States. And so it is important that we educate people about this, but also take action as legislators. So we are introducing a bill. The Assembly, we have co-sponsors, from both the House and the House of Representatives, the Assembly and the Senate. And so we are hoping that at least our Republican-controlled legislature will work with us, because many of our districts are also impacted by these PFAS chemicals. And so there is hope. Also seeing movies like the one that we just saw from Susan, and all of you being advocates, I think if we can come together, it got to be, what they call inside and outside game. Those of us who are inside must have to really work hard to make sure that we put policies in place that will be helpful. But those of you who are outside must also be able to put pressure on the rest of us to make sure that we come to the table and bring about some of these changes. They are way overdue. Thank you.
Yes, I think that's exactly right. It's got to come both from the inside and the outside. So thank you for that. Okay, so turning to our next panelist, County Attorney Menifee, thank you for joining us. And very briefly to introduce Mr. Menifee, Christian Menifee is Harris County Attorney. He's the chief civil lawyer for the largest county in Texas. He's the first African-American and the youngest person to serve in the position. He represents Harris County and serves the people of Harris County through impactful litigation and enforcement of the laws designed to protect Harris County residents, 2 years ago, Houston made national news when a fire at the hydrocarbon storage facility caught fire and creating a plume of smoke that stretched over the entirety of the city. And this week, County Attorney Menifee negotiated a successful settlement of a lawsuit against the company for environmental violations against the polluter, which is great. So congratulations. And so my question for you is this. Environment Texas research has found that almost every day in 2019, there was an illegal air pollution event threatening public health. Environment Texas has had some recent success suing polluters. And as I mentioned, you just had a big victory in Harris County making the news. And so the question for you is, can you tell us a little bit about the lawsuit you just settled and how you think we can use the courts to secure environmental progress going forward?
Sure. Thank you, Ruthie, for the kind introduction, and hello to everybody who's on, and thank you for the great words that we've heard from some of the other elected officials, especially those folks in Texas, Commissioner Shea and some of the rest of you. Good to see you. So I'm the county attorney, which is the chief civil legal officer for Harris County. It's a position that really doesn't have an analog in most major counties in the state of Texas. The county attorney does criminal work and civil work. They do misdemeanors and civil, but in Harris County here, we only do civil. So that frees us up to focus on things like environmental matters, which is something we've been very involved in. In the introduction, Ruthie mentioned that we had a successful settlement of a lawsuit against ITC for a plant explosion that occurred back in 2019. And the word successful, I think, is probably taken from our way of describing it, but I think it's a good way to kind of frame this discussion. It's successful in a sense that in this particular litigation, we were able to get a successful outcome. But in the broader schemes of moving the needle on environmental injustice, I'd say that we've been unsuccessful in Texas in the past several years, and I'll tell you why. So in our office, we have about 250 people, and we have a team that's specifically committed to going after polluters in companies that have major environmental events and make mistakes. But what we've seen is in response to the major litigation that this office has brought in, and to be clear, this includes like the work that my predecessor did, the state of Texas furthered its assault on local control by passing laws that tie our hands and make it virtually impossible for us to hold companies accountable. So ITC is a very good example. In this lawsuit, we originally filed it under state environmental laws, which allow you to seek penalties of up to $25,000 a day that you can do what's called speciating. And so that means that, like, let's say 20 chemicals are emitted, you can get $25,000 per day for each violation per pollutant that's emitted. So you can see that this can become a case that's worth tens of millions of dollars really quickly. Well, thanks to a 2017 law that was passed by our state lawmakers in Austin, the state now has the ability to snatch cases up from local governments who file the cases, right? And what's important about that is we know that when these plants have explosions, who's impacted, right? If a plant explodes in Harris County, it's Harris County and its residents who are impacted. We're the folks that have deaths. We're the folks that have animals that die. We're the folks who have an environment that'll be changed for years. We're the folks who have to evacuate in the immediate aftermath of the explosion. But instead, the state can now take the case, thanks to pro-industry laws that have been passed, and they get to pursue that case. Now, they can settle it for pennies on the dollar. The county is not involved in that case. We're not allowed to make any decisions about that case. And in fact, many times we don't even find out how it's been resolved until the information becomes public, because we're not allowed to seat at the table in those cases. So in the ITC case, we went and filed another lawsuit for violations of local laws, local regulations at the county level. And we were able to get a settlement for just under $1 million. But given the severity of that explosion, that case against ITC, ultimately, they should be paying millions of dollars and not the less than 1 million that we've got. But Ruthie, the courts are an important place to hold these companies accountable. But one area we've really focused on is permitting. These companies come in and they ask for permits to spew all kind of harmful chemicals and pollutants into the atmosphere. And it's important for governments to be at the front lines of opposing those permit applications. A good example is on the east side of town here in Harris County, in a neighborhood called Manchester. It's a predominantly Latino neighborhood, underserved community. There's a facility that was built there that asked for a permit to emit 512 tons of hydrogen cyanide per year. I don't have to tell you what hydrogen cyanide is for you to know from the name that it's a harmful chemical. We opposed their permit. We were able to negotiate them down to agree to an 80% decrease per year in emissions of that chemical. And we got them to contribute a six-figure sum to a community fund to be used for people in the area who were impacted. So it's our operation. We try to be a soup to nuts deal. The courts are an important place, but in many instances, Ruthie, By the time you're in the courts, it's too late. The major event has already happened and people already heard.
Yeah, so no, I love that you guys are focused on both aspects of it. I think that's really important and sometimes gets missed. And so I'm thank you, and I'm glad that you guys are on it. Okay, so next I have a question for Council Member Gregor. And briefly, for those joining, Council Member Gregor is a member of the City Council in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, a city of 68,000 people in the west central part of the state. He was elected in 2018, re-elected in 2021, and serves on the Plan Commission and the Transit Commission. For his day job, Jeremy works as Wisconsin outreach consultant for the National Wildlife Federation to advance federal climate and energy priorities, and volunteers on the executive boards for several local nonprofit transportation advocacy organizations, including Bike Chippewa Valley and the Chippewa Valley Transit Alliance. So welcome, Council Member Gregor. Thank you for being here. And our question for you is, Wisconsin had the nation on edge during the election and last year, and it's been purple for some time, flipping back and forth depending on the election cycle. And so it does seem like politics are still not as highly polarized maybe, but still quite polarized at the federal level, and that there may be less polarization at the city and county level. What is your experience with that? Is that right? And have you been able to work across the aisle and maybe give us an example there?
Sure. Thank you so much, Ruthie. And thank you again, Susan, for your film and the inspiration I'm getting from all of you here. Yeah, we're in a swing part of a swing state up in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and I don't really feel that it's changing. I do think, there does tend to be some more polarization between urban and rural in Wisconsin. So, Eau Claire is most of the population of our county. So, as soon as, so I don't necessarily, work with a lot of folks who live in rural areas because I don't represent a rural area. But one of the things that I think we've been challenging ourselves to do, whether that be working on, environmental issues or issues of justice and policing, is how do we reach out to those more rural areas in our part of the state and work on the county level in addition to the city level, because that can reach that can help bridge that urban and rural divide. So our city has passed 100% renewable energy goal by the year 2050, and we quickly encourage the county to join us. And that brings up issues of how, folks in rural areas who tend to be more conservative, at least in Wisconsin, can have a seat at the table for the solutions, and make sure that, the issues that they face are addressed, and the jobs that they need are part of the benefits that come along with addressing climate change. And, we included the county joined that 100% goal. The school district joined that 100% goal, the University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire. And then now we're reaching out, working with the city of Menominee, which is a city of about 17,000 people to the west of us in a county of 40,000 people. And they've joined the 100% goal, and Dunn County is going to be joining hopefully in the matter of months. So we found that those are really positive, goals, and it kind of gives people hope. And that's part of what we've been talking about today. And then we've created a renewable energy action plan, and that's the action, how can we get people behind planning for the future, and, organizing each other around, actually meeting these goals. So, we do need help from the state, and it's great to have a legislator with us. And, we've been talking about our state budget. I was out on Earth Day last week, out in front of our Joint Finance Committee hearing on the state budget in Menominee. And I was able to make that whole connection that I just talked about, of that local 100% renewable energy goal, talking about, the responsibility of the state, to help, cities with the planning efforts that they need to make, or address those local pollution issues like PFAS. And then, of course, we have some great opportunities on the national level right now, where last night, President Biden was talking about the American Jobs Plan and how really the green jobs and, good paying jobs can be a part of the solution to addressing climate change. And then, last week was the Global Climate Leaders Summit. So everything's kind of falling together right now, and we just need to keep making those connections and think about it on a local to state to national to global level. And I think we'll find the collaboration and inspiration that we need. So thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, that's great. And it sort of ties us back into the Community Conversations film tour program and what they're trying to do, and really trying to increase understanding in local communities and build empathy and encourage folks and help bridge the divide. And so, yeah, I think it's great that we're continuing to keep that momentum moving forward, and that you are thinking about rural communities and how to bring them into the conversation in some way. All right, well, City Councilman, you're next up. So I'm going to give a quick introduction. So Councilmember Worthman grew up on his family's 600-acre organic dairy farm in West Central Wisconsin. He was elected at the age of 25 and has served for 12 years at the Eau Claire City Council, championing issues of affordable housing, living wages, labor rights, and sustainability. He works as a consultant in the Midwest for the Pew Charitable Trusts and focused on federal policy around flood resilience and conservation. And he is also an elected member of the Democratic National Committee from Wisconsin. Andrew and his wife, Carrie, own a home in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and they have a dog named Abby. So welcome, thank you for being here. And our question to you sort of does tie into what Councilmember Gregor was just talking about. So the film that Susan's beautiful film is about action and solutions. And one promising solution is shifting towards green infrastructure, something we understand that you're a big proponent of. And can you tell us about green infrastructure and what about, like, how you see green infrastructure and what about it gives you hope? And then perhaps the part in the film that touched you the most, whether it relates to that or if it was something else, the other aspect.
Thank you, Ruthie. And thank you, Susan, for the film. As a beekeeper myself, I think those scenes with the pollinators and having grown up on a organic dairy farm, that connection, I think, to our land, to growing food, to making food, I think are some of the things that are so ingrained in human beings as a way of really understanding the earth. And to me, those are really powerful moments in the film. And I think are also the kinds of inspiration that we need to come together. One of the things that I've seen being involved in my local community garden, but also having grown up on a farm, is that when you bring people together to grow food, you put aside all of those differences that I think often traditionally may divide us. To me, the idea of green infrastructure, as an elected official, I joined the call to the administration that I know that Environment America helped coordinate, but this call to the administration to say that we need to be investing in our future, and we need to be thinking about how do we harness the power of nature to really build our communities. And with my work with the Pew Charitable Trust, that's something that we've kind of also embraced, this idea that that instead of sort of hardening and pushing against nature, that there's actually a place for softening our edges, for bringing in, for example, living shorelines and some of the things that help with flood control. Those are the kinds of ideas that I think we need to be incorporating. We have erosion problems in the state of Wisconsin. We have these constant threats of flooding. And so to me, green infrastructure really means that we're recognizing the power of nature and we're incorporating it into our communities in a positive and powerful way. I think just going back to that idea that when human beings can come together and really be in nature and experience that, it's powerful and moving. And I think your film really helps to kind of drive home that idea of hope is found in those around us and in the beauty of nature.
Yes, I agree. I thought that was really great. And I think that brings me, A quick question for Luke and Megan, and then Susan, I want to come back to you with one last question. We'll close it out, being mindful of time. And if anyone has anything to add at the end, certainly let me know and we can squeeze that in. So one of the folks featured in the film mentioned the art, and I'm paraphrasing because I didn't get the exact quote, but just the art has an emotional and personal component that can make people think and change the world. And that quote was another one that really stuck with me. And so Luke, I'll start with you. Sort of what does that quote mean to you, and what part of the movie, kind of in the work that you do as Director of Environment Texas, sort of what part of the movie really resonated the most with you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the power of film and images is, inherently moves people, and they're very powerful, particularly the ones on the oceans and just the significant threats to them. In Texas, we're on the Gulf of Mexico, and which is a wonderful place, and full of wildlife, but threatened significantly from overfishing, from plastic pollution, from offshore oil drilling. Of course, people remember the tragic BP Deepwater Horizon spill that the Gulf is still recovering from. And so, I think that's something we know that Texans have a close tie to the Gulf and to our beaches, and really appreciate it. And so that's something that we are working to kind of capture, that public love for the Gulf, and for more solutions to protect it. We were proud to be part of an effort just this year to protect the Flower Garden Banks National Marine Sanctuary. It's basically underwater mountains in the Gulf of Mexico off the coast of Texas and Louisiana that the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration declared or expanded 3 times that marine sanctuary. So that was another, working in Texas could be very challenging, but moments like that give me a lot of hope, and we're eager to get more wins like that.
Great, thank you. And Megan, what about you? What does that quote mean to you? And sort of what, given your work with Wisconsin Environment, what bit in the film really struck you the most?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for participating in this evening. For me, I think what really I'm coming away with and in the film was just the sense of hope. And I really also like that, just that image of whether it's Greta Thunberg or really any kid who not only, expects us to do things to help the planet and help each other, but is optimistic and wants to be engaged. And I think ultimately that's where most of us come down, right? We want to be connected. We want to be helping to have healthier, happier, cleaner communities for everyone. And and even just overhearing, I have a 2nd grader and a 6th grader, and they're really optimistic and also frustrated that things aren't better than they could be. And I think for all of us to, have these moments to connect with each other and to think like an 8-year-old about what should be done, and, and to work to achieve that. And so I think last night's speech from President Biden also gave me a lot of hope. I'm really excited about particularly the, this idea of all electric school buses, right? And Jeremy's example of, a school district going 100% renewable. I think where we can connect in Wisconsin with kids especially, and help families and communities provide healthier communities for kids, that's a great starting point for us. And it's really hard to deny, from a political standpoint, that we shouldn't be helping kids breathe easier, have clean water, have a livable climate. So those are some of the things that are kind of coming to mind for me, and all of the optimism that comes from your film, Susan.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. And again, thank you. You all have had such amazing insight and comments, and tying it back to the film, but also the work that you're doing, and we really appreciate you. So I have one last question for Susan, and if we have time, we can open it up to the whole panel. Or if any of you have a burning question for Susan, I'm happy to, we can take those too. We don't have a lot of time left in our last few minutes. So Susan, there was a quote in sort of the middle part of the film by Gus Speth, who was one of the co-founders of NRDC. And he said, I used to think that the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change, but I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with these, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation. And so again, there was quite a few quotes throughout the movie that really kind of struck me and stayed with me, but that one was particularly powerful. And at the Public Interest Network, we talk a lot about the post-scarcity world and problems of abundance and how we really are in such a consumer driven society, and we're just like locusts, just consuming without regard for what happens when we're done. Like there's no way, and we just are a throwaway society. And we have a, get the waste out of fashion campaign, which was, featured in your film, which I appreciated, because I think a lot of people aren't even aware how much the fact that the fashion industry is the second largest producer of greenhouse gas emissions. So anyway, sort of, I wanted to ask you about that quote and sort of the idea of how we really do need to kind of shift the paradigm and shift the way we think about this. And what have you thought about this? And kind of what are your thoughts on how we get to that next step and kind of really, I mean, your film is one step in the right direction. All these people, the folks here tonight with us, our esteemed panelists, are talking about ways we can kind of shift the paradigm. But what are your thoughts about that quote and about how you think we can get to the next level?
So, I think a lot about the need for leadership on all levels. We need enlightened leadership on the corporate level. I think many people know Paul Pullman, who ran Unilever. He's a great sustainability advocate. He started a new company called Imagine, co-founded it with some other, based on the song Imagine. And he's bringing together CEOs in different sectors: fashion, food system change, finance. And the whole theory of change is that if you can bring these leaders together in a non-competitive space to talk about the fact that we are all part of this common future, and the fact that most of them, sadly, are men, but they're also mostly fathers that are caring about their children and having conversations about their children, that we need to work together and collectively throughout all parts of the supply chain. So I think that we need leadership in the corporate sector. We need to really sow the seeds of leadership, especially with young people. And I'm so happy to see young people involved in politics. And there's a great group called the Next 50, which is looking to seed different people on local level. I don't know if any of you know about them, but they're really saying that, so much of the change that needs to happen. And I think everybody kind of touched upon this and is doing this work, that if you don't get the policy right, you could be fighting. And we saw what happened in the last 4 years without having science-based moral leadership at the top. And so I think we need a huge sort of shift in understanding that we need to be more in the creative economy. I know that Pope Francis wrote this incredible encyclical about how we have got to get into better relationship to the earth and with each other. And a lot of it is just and I think the pandemic brought this to light too, the whole idea of the maker's mindset. And, a little bit, Andrew, what you were saying, that when people come together to grow food, the food system and the fragility of the food system was completely illuminated by the pandemic. And we could have lost 30 years of re-regionalizing food systems because of that. So I think that it's really important to move people to understand that we are all one planet, we are all interconnected. I keep thinking the mask is the best way to understand our interconnectedness, that you wear it not just for yourself, but for all the people around you and for the people that you love. And if we could look more in the way of gratitude and understanding our interconnections, I think we would have the transformation that's so desperately needed. But we need it on the local level. We need it on the, the community, the town, cities, national and global. We need everybody working on this together. That's why I'm so grateful to be with all of you, because I am so inspired and I'm so hopeful listening to all of you and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I really appreciate those words. And I'm inspired. I was inspired by the film, and now I'm even more inspired by all the good work that you are all doing at the local level and beyond. And so thank you for it. Does anyone have a question for Susan? We have a couple of minutes left, and then we're going to wrap up. If anyone has a question for Susan, we can take maybe one or two, and then, okay, Commissioner Shea, go for it.
Cool question. Can we share your video? Is it available publicly, or do we have to go through certain channels to make it available to the public?
You could go through the Film Collaborative and they can send you the link, or you could email me directly. And it does sound, I don't know, there was some sort of weird sound hiccup tonight, or at least it wasn't mine. I was having a delay, so it wasn't synced up. But yeah, however you want to get it out there, it's yours for the making. And I just have to say, you know, I would love to stay in touch with all of you. I'm so impressed with the work that you're doing, and it's so very important on every level, like super inspired by Jeremy and Luke and Megan, Samba, everybody. It was just awesome. And also I have to say, Andrew, as a beekeeper, let's talk bees, but we have Guernsey cows. We have a dairy in upstate New York. So I'd love to talk best practices on organic dairy. We're having our issues, so I'd love to talk to you about
and Samba was you were a sustainable farmer, right? So
and Samba, you too. I'd love to hear more about Gambia and everybody else. I think we all can connect over a good meal together.
In Texas, we have a bee connection. My husband's a large-scale beekeeper and lavender farmer, so.
Oh my goodness.
Lots
we
of
need to have a beekeeper reunion in Texas.
We should all share our honey. We should all do a honey exchange.
I'd love it. That would be great.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, well, what we can do is we can connect everyone so we all have one another's emails. And then as far as if any folks participating and listening have any questions, I'll go ahead and drop my email in the chat before we sign off. And Luke and Aaron, and Luke and Megan, you can drop your emails in the chat. And then we'll figure out a way to share this collectively, the recording of this wonderful discussion, because it would be great to share this discussion as well as the film, because it was really interesting, as well as the film. And then we can push that out to you guys so you can share with your networks as well. But with that, we're going to wrap up. Thank you, everyone, for participating. We truly appreciate it. It was wonderful. Hope to see you all soon.
Thanks so much. Have a great evening, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So great to meet you all.
Nice to meet you.
Bye-bye.